The following program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Rogers or Rogers TV.
So who cues me? Good evening, and welcome to In Tune with Real Estate. Tonight, Howard Drukarsh, myself, I'm the host, and Rav Tour is off. We have a terrific show, and before we get into the show, I thought maybe what I would do is tell Rav's viewers a little bit about why I'm here tonight. I've been on Rav's show as a guest for many, many years, probably about 8 years, and Rav invited me to see what it's like on the hosting side. So I'm hosting a show. Our topic tonight is home inspections, and we have two terrific experts in that field. One of them is John Brook from Buyer's Choice. The other is Kelly Mitchell, who's a salesperson who works with John. Before we go into it, I'll tell you a little bit about myself and my credentials and why I'm standing here. I started in the business in 1984. In 1986, I became a broker. Worked in that field as a salesperson until 2004, and in 2004, myself and co-founder Arthur Bartram started a company called Right at Home Realty. Our company started with no agents. We've now grown to 2,500. We have 6 offices, 6 full-service offices, one of which is not too far from our studio, managed by Jim Engineer, and that's the plug I told him I'd give him. The business of real estate has changed a lot since I started in the business, and the rules and what's responsible in terms of to the consumer and to each other has changed. This year, I was also given the privilege through election to get onto the Real Estate Council of Ontario board, and I'm a board member as of 2013. We're going to go into the show in a few minutes, and we're going to talk about why home inspections are important. But first, we're going to go to the poll question from last week. The question was, if you were handed $250,000 today, would you buy real estate with it? Interesting response. Of all the people that answered, 50% said yes they would, and 50% said no they wouldn't. So that was this week's. We're going to have a question for you for next week, and the question to answer is, have you been satisfied with the home inspectors you've used in the past? Again, you have a choice of either yes or no. So please call in and help us with our poll. Thanks very much. I'm going to turn over our opening shot to John Brook, who's beside me. John has been a home inspector, I'm not sure for how many years, but he will tell you all about his background. And welcome to the show, John.
Thank you, Art.
Okay.
Pleasure to be here.
Thank you. So tell us a bit about our viewers. I know when I started in the business, there really weren't even home inspectors in 1984. People would buy properties and maybe have a friend look at it. Then there were people who had been kind of in construction, went through houses and picked things out. And then the industry became more sophisticated, and in being more sophisticated, there were more rules, and obviously a company like yours specializes in what it's all about. Why don't we just move to that in a moment? Tell us about.
Well, people still get their friends and relatives to look at their home for them, but yeah, things have changed. I purchased the Buyer's Choice Home Inspection franchise just around a year ago, and I've been very satisfied with it. The training's been excellent, and the support is great, and I'm having the time of my life right now.
Good. And you're working with Kelly Mitchell, who'll be joining us in the next section. How did you and Kelly get together? How did you?
We met at a BNI group, business networking group in Brampton, and there's about 35 of us in that group, and they're all professionals. And the idea is that we just find referrals for each other, and we establish relationships, and they're all professionals. And Kelly and I liked each other. We both realized that we work well together, and it's been quite good.
I know when home buyers have all of the stress of a major purchase like a home or even a condo for that matter, what they're really worried about are two main things: the financing, can they afford it, and is the building sound?
Yeah.
And I'm sure that when you meet with people, particularly I'm guessing first-time home buyers, what you're faced with is how do you communicate if there's something that may be needed to be fixed, but not cause panic where they go, oh God, I'm not prepared, or I don't know how to fix a broken window, or the roof needs to be done? How do you kind of learn how to communicate it so they understand every home needs some improvement, but it doesn't mean it's a bad home?
Yeah, well, that's one of the first things that we tell them, like, no home is perfect. There's always something, and we're looking for the major stuff, and there's always going to be a few little things. So you just reassure them that it's quite common. Just the way you have to look after your body, your car, you got to maintain your home. So things like painting and caulking and regular home maintenance, it's just, you make them aware of it, you teach them about it, and they seem very comfortable with that. And then if it comes to anything big, we know people.
Okay.
If it's something that's a major issue, then you can steer them in the right direction.
Right.
That are professionals that can look after that for them. And you just don't make a big thing out of something that's not, really.
Okay. And when you're doing a home inspection, how often are the clients, the buyers, with you?
Oh, I hope they're there all the time. Any
Okay.
ones I've done, they've always been there. I encourage it. Come, ask lots of questions. It's how they learn about their home. It's how I can teach them. And make it entertaining, educational, and they really appreciate it at the end.
So while they're going through and you say, okay, I found, let's use a broken window in the basement, right, which can happen.
Oh, yeah.
And they say, gee, John, how much is it going to cost? Is that always the concern as soon as you mention something?
Oh, well, there's always a cost factor there,
Right.
yeah. I just tell them, like, we're general practitioners. We're not specialists in that field. We just try and find the stuff. Any major stuff, we've got them in the right direction for that.
Okay.
But usually if it's just small stuff, you can pretty much say, this is stuff you can fix yourself, or you can find someone to do it. It's not going to be a huge expense. You just steer them in the right direction, really.
I don't sell now, but when I did, I remember working together when there was a couple there. And when there's a couple with you, do you find that one or the other gets more animated? Do you find the husband goes, oh, wait, I can fix it? Or the wife says, geez, is there a lot of that you deal with?
I haven't really seen that, no.
Oh, okay. Well, husbands don't fix things anymore. I guess that's the reason.
Well, actually, yeah, I've had quite a few that were first-time home buyers, so everything is alien to them.
Right.
There was a case just a while ago, a buyer just moved into his home. It was on Mother's Day.
Okay.
And he gave me a call. I just moved in, can't get the furnace to work.
Okay,
So I showed
great.
him how to use it.
Yeah.
And that, but I was able to go by and get it fixed for him.
Okay. John, we're gonna pick this up in a moment. Right now, we're going to go take a break. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Thanks.
Whoa.
My phone.
Dry mouth. What?
The opinions expressed in the following program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Rogers or Rogers TV.
Welcome back to In Tune with Real Estate. I'm Howard Drukarsh, and I'm standing in for Rav Tour. One of the reasons you can tell I'm standing in is that in the earlier section, I advised all of our guests to turn off their Blackberries, and I didn't. So if you heard some weird sounds, that's me, and I apologize for that. But I'm guessing most of the audience have had that same embarrassing moment, so I'm kind of like everybody else tonight. Our first guest tonight is John Brook of Buyer's Choice. In the earlier section, we were talking about just a range of things, but in my experience as a real estate agent before becoming a manager, I remember there were so many different ways that clients would react going through a home inspection. Let's start with working at price points. Let's say it's a lower price point, and it's, let's say, a small house like a two-bedroom bungalow. About how long does it take to go through and do that kind of inspection?
Still generally take around 2.5 hours.
Okay.
The detached are around 3 hours.
Okay, so the things that you check would be, well, actually you know about more than I do, but it would be like the mechanical systems and things, all of that.
Yeah.
It just means in a two-bedroom house, there's less kind of rooms, but all the same mechanicals have to be checked, right?
Yeah, you still all got the same systems. You got your
Right.
foundation, it's the attic, the roof, heating, plumbing, all the major stuff that takes the time is still there. So the bedrooms are just secondary.
And depending on the area of the city, I guess some homes have forced air, some homes have rad heating, some have, I guess, electric baseboard, radiant. Do you ever run into radiant heat that comes through the ceiling? Is that gone?
I haven't seen any through the ceiling, no.
Okay.
The radiators, heat pumps.
Yes. And when you're going through and you're seeing, I guess this kind of relates to first-time buyers. If you say, this is a heat pump, and they've been living in a condo, do they have any idea of what a heat pump and how much time do you take explaining how it works and what it's about?
Well, I can't go into great detail, but I do give them an idea of how it works. Same as heat recovery ventilators. People don't know how they operate, so I'll explain how that works.
Okay.
Even people don't know how humidifiers work, so I'll explain how that works. But thank God we got the Google nowadays, so they can look everything up.
And they can probably
in
walk
detail.
through with their iPad, and as you're
Hey.
talking, they can check everything out.
Yeah.
That's a two-bedroom house. Let's say you end up with a really big house. I don't know, it could be 8,000 square feet, really big house. How long would it take to do an inspection of that size?
Well, it'll probably just take just over 4 hours. You still got your same systems, but the bedrooms are pretty much cookie cutter. There's not too much deficiencies and things there. Yeah, you still got your electrical, and that you have to look at. You're looking at for any water damage or things like that. But
okay. There are seasonal things that come into play, obviously, as a home inspector. If someone buys a house in November, they have a pool in the backyard, can't look at it, can't test it. How do you handle pools when the inspection doesn't give you a chance to see it?
Well, any system we can't get a good look at, I just recommend they get a technician in there to check everything. When they get the house, everything should operate. They're told it operates, so run everything as soon as you get the home, and then when the seasons come up, get everything inspected to make sure it's functioning and that it's as it was supposed to be.
Okay, and obviously it would be hard for you to comment on a pool if you can't see the pool, right?
Well, that's it. Those are the limitations you run into. Anything you can't see, it's just limitation. You just document it and just tell the people, like, that's what I can see, that's what I can't see.
Okay. Condos. I think the Toronto Real Estate Board, half of the sales are condos right now. What's a condo inspection when really you're not looking at foundations or roofs? How do you kind of go about doing those things?
I still spend a couple hours in a condo.
Okay.
They still have all their own heating and air conditioning. They still got all their windows. Still take a good look at all the plumbing and everything in there, the electrical. I just did a few last week in Markham, and I spent a great deal of time there. I still went down to the parking lot, check out their storage unit.
I see. And you mentioned Markham. We're in Brampton. How's the territory worked out when you're in your field?
Well, for us, when we buy a unit, I've got Brampton North, so this is the area I market in.
Okay.
But a lot of times the realtors will say, well, John, I got a client that's buying a
Right.
place here. Will you come look at it?
Yeah.
I have the option. I can either refer them to a gentleman out there
Right.
that's quite capable, or I'll do it myself. And usually they would like me to do it because they're familiar with my work.
Yes.
And so.
Well, you seem really professional. So I'm thinking, if I was your client and I was a first-time home buyer and I bought a house in Brampton, and then I was transferred to Vaughan, I'd want to call and say, "Can you do my house?" Right? Because the more people are familiar with you, the more likely they'll want you to be the one who does the home. They'll feel more comfortable because they know who you are and they know your work.
Yeah, that happens. I did an inspection for a gentleman in Rexdale, and the homeowner was there, and he saw how I was doing the inspection, and he had me inspect his house in Cambridge that he was buying.
Okay,
So that's.
You know, the other thing that in a hot market where it's a seller's market, not a lot of inventory. What has happened in the past is the seller will hire the home inspector to do an inspection, so that when the buyers come through, they can at least get some sense of what the condition of the house is. How much of that do you find in your practice?
Not a whole lot, because the buyers still think that there's some bias, that the sellers have, well, they've hired this guy, so he will only find what they want him to find, type of thing. But that's not the case.
Right. But human nature being suspect.
That's just what it is.
Right.
But actually, in most cases, you can do a more thorough examination because it's the homeowner you're dealing with, so you can move stuff. You can look at things in more detail where you can't when it's the buyer.
Yes. Yes. Well, I was just thinking about this. When you're doing a home inspection, and I guess I'm focusing on first-time buyers because that category is clearly the most nervous of all of the buyers. Yeah. And I know when they buy houses, and Kelly can talk about this as well, often the first-time buyer doesn't come alone. They bring parents. They bring other people that are influencing their decision. How about in a home inspection? Do you find that along with the young couple, they would bring in other decision makers?
I've seen a few where there were some other family members. I did one where family members came and the homeowners were having a dinner party at the same time. Okay. So it was a house full. Really? It was a little difficult. The good thing was all the cooking appliances worked because they were using everything.
So it worked out perfectly.
Yeah, you just you work with what you've got. You work around what you can, and you get it done. You persevere. Yeah.
When you're doing a home inspection and the homeowner is there, now that's like the homeowner is going, I've got the house sold, conditional on probably maybe financing, but definitely on inspection, or you wouldn't be there. And you're going through the house, and the homeowner is going, please don't find anything. Right? They're thinking, do a good job, but don't find anything. How do you handle the interplay between yourself and the homeowner, where they know that you can make the deal or possibly break the deal? What's the sort of, what would you do to calm the homeowner down so they're not thinking you're the enemy, but you're actually there? In truth, the idea of a home inspection, I always used to think this, the idea of a home inspection is to assure the buyer it was a good decision, not to find problems.
Yeah, I've had not too many cases like that. There was one where the homeowner came down, I was looking at the electrical panel, and he got a little irate, like, you can't do that, like, you're not supposed to look at that. And it's like, well, there's nothing wrong. Right. But I just reassured him, like, well, when you go to purchase a home, you're going to want the home inspector to look at it to make sure it's okay for you. So I'm just doing it for this gentleman, and he was fine with that.
You know, a lot of times what would make the home inspection actually go easier is if the listing agent would explain to the seller, this is what a condition on inspection is about. There will be a home inspector coming in. They will be going through your house. Try not to interfere. They're there to try to help the buyer feel comfortable. Does that ever happen where you know the homeowner's been coached?
I haven't seen it, no.
I bet you Kelly does it all the time.
Maybe.
She's an experienced agent. Pardon me?
It would be nice if they did, because then they can be reassured that this is what is supposed to happen. And
right.
Like I said, they'll want it when they go to purchase.
And the other thing about the home inspection is when it's done, it's a report that's ordered by the buyer, paid for by the buyer, so the seller is not going to be getting a copy of it. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. Your piece just came out.
Yeah, it's just for the buyer.
Okay, great. And when the buyer gets it from you, how do you go over it? What do you do to have them understand what's in there? It's obviously like a book, right?
I email them a PDF report, anywhere from 20 to 30 pages. There's lots of pictures in there. It's very descriptive. It's one of the state-of-the-art reports nowadays out there. I think there's no tick marks, yes or no. It's acceptable, marginal, deficient. There's descriptive lines of everything. It takes about 2 to 3 hours to put a good report together. So I explain this to them, and then any questions, give me a call. But usually the inspection, everything is right there, and then the report is just kind of the icing on the cake, and this is what.
Okay. When they get the report, and it's a lot of reading, if they want to call you and say, I read page 15, and I'm not really sure of, let's use the heat pump. What is it that you said about the heat pump? How do you explain things to them if it's kind of technical and they're not really educated in the technical side of the business?
Well, that's a good thing about the pictures too, because anytime I'm trying to explain anything, especially with the new home buyers, they don't know a lot of the systems in the home. There's a picture there to help describe it. So anything I can do to help that way, if it's even just sending extra information about the system, heat recovery ventilator for a lady, she didn't know about it. So I sent her the manual on it as well to assist her. So anything I can do to help them out, I'll do it.
So we've talked about the first-time home buyer, which has got to be, what percentage of your business would you say is first-time home buyer?
Actually, in Brampton, it's a pretty high percentage that I'm getting. It's easily 50%.
Okay. When you get out of the first-time home buyer category, let's say the second-time buyer, what percentage would you say? I guess there's first time, second, and then there's kind of those retiring and not buying anymore.
Yeah, I usually just ask them if they had a home before. Sometimes they're not, forward with how many they've had or whatever, but it might be another 30%, something like that, have had at least one home before there.
The one thing we didn't talk about, and when we get Kelly in the next section, we'll talk more about how home inspectors work with the real estate industry. What did you do before becoming a home inspector, and why in the world did you choose to become a home inspector?
Well, years ago when I was just a young lad, I started out and went to college for engineering drafting, and then got into tool and die, and did that for many years. And then I was a maintenance manager of an 80,000 square foot facility in Mississauga. It was a heat treat facility, so we hardened steel and furnaces. So I learned all about furnaces and water towers and coolers and plumbing and everything there. And then I ran my own business for about 8 years. And then I just decided it was time to get into something that was a little bit more that I wanted to do. I wanted to get back working with my hands again, and just a little bit better time management too, home life and working.
Okay, well, and everybody's striving for that. Here's the real question I'm sure a buyer's choice would want me to ask. Why did you choose buyer's choice?
Well,
it's all yours. Take it away.
It's me. I always do my homework. It doesn't matter if I'm buying electronic equipment or what I'm doing. I always search things out and look at what's the best fit for me. There's quite a few different franchises out there, and this one was Canadian owned. It's got a good presence in Canada. They've got excellent support. The training is just superior. I think we go down to a boot camp for 2 weeks where you do all inspecting down there and some marketing training. We do Carson Dunlop trainings. That's over 400 hours of training there, and then 6 months worth of mentoring before you're allowed to do your first inspection. And I don't think anybody comes close to that.
Yeah, it's interesting. When I started in the business, the home inspectors were really just, it's hard to believe they actually got paid for what they did, but they would come into the house, and the worst part of it is they would say to the buyer, gee, this is really bad. And the agents went nuts. And what happened as a result of that is some home inspectors would get business because they knew how to do it as you do, and some just got out of the business because they would just scare everybody. And at the end of the scaring, the deal fell apart.
Yeah.
So
like I said, it's a business. You have to know how to run a business. You have to know how to communicate with the people. It doesn't matter how technical savvy you are and how much you know. If you can't communicate it to the people, then you're just not going to succeed.
Right.
And this is another thing that we are taught when we buy the franchise, is how to communicate, to learn the things. And
okay, we're going to bring in Kelly Mitchell, who's an experienced and a very successful realtor in the next segment. Why don't we begin today, or this segment before she comes on? Tell me a bit of how you and Kelly connected. How did you find each other, and that's kind of a history, and she's obviously going to talk about that as well.
Yeah, well, that was in like I said, in our B&I group. We met there, and We started working together last year. And,
what the
the Business Builders BNI networking group in Brampton. And we started working together, and obviously she took a chance on me.
Okay.
And I met her expectations, and we've had a very good working relationship since then. So she's had happy customers, and that's all that really counts.
Great. And so in working with her as a reference, does that kind of generate? She'll tell other realtors that, geez, I've worked with Johnny's a fantastic home inspector. Do you end up getting more business? I guess it's kind of your client is indirectly the buyer, or directly the buyer, I suppose. But the real estate salesperson has to recommend you as well.
Yeah, she's recommended me to some of the agents in her office, and again, they've taken a chance with me, and they've been happy too, so that's quite nice.
And it's interesting, a show like this gives you the opportunity to talk to a wider audience about what you do. I know I've been on Rav's show over the years, and we talk about real estate in general, not specifically our company. But if you had a chance to sort of say to a couple of things you'd want to say to the public about what should you think about when you're hiring a home inspector, what would those couple of things be?
Well, they should have the proper training. Like I said, the Carson Dunlop training is second to none. It's very extensive, and then the mentoring is great too. So if they've had some mentoring, then they've seen a lot of stuff. It's not like if you've gone to the community college where you haven't had the experience to go out to see these things. We have that opportunity, and it's a benefit for us. Insured, you got to be insured. Mm-hmm. If you don't have your errors, omissions, and liability, some people can't afford it. It's expensive.
You mean so could you be a home inspector without E&O?
You can here.
Really?
Yeah. As soon as it gets legislated here, things are going to change. Our company is very strong in BC, and all these rules are regulated out there, and we're just waiting for it here because everybody is up to snuff to what we should have.
Well, I'll tell you, as a let's call it someone in the real estate industry, what you don't want to do is you don't refer somebody who is not deep in the pocket. In other words, if somebody referred a home inspector has no E&O and there's a problem, there's a huge problem. Not only for the person who bought the house who now finds out they have a problem, the person who recommended them, the real estate company. So by hiring a company like yours that has E&O, you take away that issue of insurance, right?
Yeah. Yes, for sure. Cool. It's just something you need. Everybody should have it. Any business should really have that.
And within let's talk about, again, to kind of promote your territory here, which is probably not a bad idea.
Yeah.
Within your territory, there have got to be days when you have one call, and there's got to be days when you get 5 calls. What do you do on the days when you get 5 calls? Say, John, you got to come today. I just bought this. You know how people get excited.
Yeah.
How do you ever?
You try and schedule what you can. The good thing about us is that we do have other franchisees in the area that are quite capable, and if there's something you can't handle, then maybe they can pick up some slack for you. We have this bond between each other that we can do that. A guy can call me, I can't do it, can you do it? Sure.
And I guess that's the beauty of a company like yours, is that everybody is trained exactly the same way. So if it's not John showing up and it's Mike, the services that are going to be offered are going to be the same
You should
quality.
expect that.
Yeah.
I would expect it, so yes.
That's great. And it's such an interesting field because when you're buying a property, if there's conditions, generally there's only two major ones. One is conditional on financing. You've got to know you're capable of handling the purchase. The other one is conditional on inspection. Now, financing you don't really see. You go to the bank or a lending institution, and they either approve you or they don't. Home inspection, you're there. It's the house you've used the term fallen in love with. The emotional level of home inspection must be gigantic.
Yeah, it can be. I can be a scapegoat too. Sometimes people come into that and they already know they made a bad decision. They don't want to buy it, and I'm their out. So it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the place. It's just.
So they're going to want to hope that you find. I guess it's called buyer's remorse in our industry, where they're saying, I don't know if I really want it now. And they're hoping that you will find the foundation fell apart the day that you walked in, or the roof caved in while you're standing there, stuff like that. I guess the salesperson is always with the client to try to calm things down.
Yeah.
And that must help you out as well, because they have this longer relationship with the client.
Well, that's it.
And they've introduced you as the expert, and they're kind of mediating if things come up. And I used to think on an average inspection you'd get 3,000 to 5,000 roughly that could go wrong. You just advise the client, every house it's a machine.
Well, that's just it, yeah. Like I said, there's no home that's perfect. There's always something you're going to find. You know, the real estate professional, they've got this relationship with the buyer, and we're just kind of an extension off of that. They trust them, so in hand, they have to be able to trust what we do and the work we perform for them.
You know what, we've just met, but I really get the feeling you are a professional at what you do, and your company sounds exactly what you've said. This is John Brook. John is with Buyer's Choice, and if you want to reach him, you can reach him that way. We're coming back with Kelly Mitchell in a moment. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Thanks.
The opinions expressed in the following program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Rogers or Rogers TV.
Hi, and welcome back to In Tune with Real Estate. I'm Howard Drukarsh. I'm standing in for the expert host, Rav Tour. Tonight we have two guests, and we're really focusing on home inspections and what that means in the real estate sale. In the last section, we talked to John Brook of Buyer's Choice, and today, as a colleague of his, Kelly Mitchell's with us. And Kelly, welcome to In Tune with Real Estate.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Okay. Well, when we were talking about home inspections, we kind of got into how is it that a home inspector gets business? Why do certain real estate salespeople pick one home inspector over another? Let's talk about when you first connected with John. Obviously, you've been in the business and your experience, and you've probably seen a lot of home inspectors. What was it that made you think, I really want to get to know this inspector, and I want to try to help my clients by having someone really good?
Well, actually, John did touch on that, and he missed one thing, and I wanted to add to that. We did meet at a networking event. However, he said that, we connected and we liked each other and decided to work together. It was a little bit more than that.
See,
I think
John, you didn't give all the
I
details.
think he's shortchanging himself a little bit there, because just because I like someone doesn't mean that they're going to handle my clients.
Good point.
So I need my clients to be happy.
Right.
Home inspection is paramount in my business. I've got to have someone that is professional, knowledgeable, does know how to speak to people. And it took me a while to get to know him, to see how he worked. He offered to do home inspection, on my house, my own house, for me, to show me how he
that was
would.
smart.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Well, it is.
Really?
And so that way, I got to see how he did it. I got to see his knowledge. I got to see how he spoke to me. And that's very, very, very important to me.
That was so smart. Did you suggest it or did you ask for it? How did that come about?
No, it was just something I offered up.
Really?
Well,
Wow,
what
that's
better
brilliant.
way for someone to see your work ethics and how you
Oh, I thought
behave?
It's brilliant.
It is.
And so therefore, when you're recommending him, you can also say, "I've seen him in action."
Absolutely.
And that's great.
Well, I see him in action, everything he does, because
Yeah.
I'm there,
Yes.
right from the start to the finish, because it's very important, again, for me, and more importantly for my clients, to be satisfied. That's what my business, our business, is built on. And I don't want them in any situation when they move into the house and something is wrong. I don't want that phone call. I want them to be happy.
When you're doing the home inspection, we talked about the nervousness, that happens because the buyer, if it's a first-time buyer, if it's a second-time buyer, if it's a small purchase, if it's a large purchase, it's a big deal.
Yep.
When you're trying to keep things calm and I wouldn't say mediate, but try to keep like a nice level amount of emotion, what do you do when things start to get out of control? When the buyer goes, I don't understand that. Why did that? And are you answering it or are you deferring it to John? How do you handle things?
Well, that's actually what he does. And that's
Okay.
one of the reasons why I like him to be with my clients for home inspection, because he can diffuse a situation. And I don't think we've ever had a situation because, they're really, home inspection brings to light a lot of things, not deficiencies. It also brings to light the good things.
Good point.
It brings education. He tells people how to turn the water off in the house, how to change a furnace filter. As easy as that. Most people put them in backwards. I didn't know that, and I found that out.
That's if they even try to change it.
Well, that's true
right.
too.
Right.
All about all of that. So, as he's going along, it also is the longevity. It's not just that, he looks at a furnace. The price of the home that the buyers may have purchased the home
Right.
for may have included or a discount because the furnace was old or
Right.
defective. So
Right.
in that case, they're expecting that. And so that's not really a problem. But he will go in and look at the furnace and say, it's a 12-year-old furnace, but it's great. It's been maintained. It'll last you for another 8 years. So that way, my clients then can budget.
Yes.
So they know what to expect down the road.
Good point.
And if the furnace is ready to go in a year, well, they know that too. So
That's actually an interesting point. When someone gets a home inspection report at the end, they get estimates of what it'll cost to repair various items, correct?
No.
No, that was a different. That was another show.
They don't get that from me.
Do they? Well, if they say to you, "How much is a roof?" How do you kind of handle that?
Well, the good thing about our contract has in the back, it has a general cost guide. If
Okay,
you're doing
well,
home improvements or repairs,
That's what I was referring to.
that's all it is. It's in the back. It says,
Okay.
here's the low end, here's the high end. Because it all
Perfect.
depends on the workmanship, the quality. There's too many variables.
And
I
thank you
can't
for
say.
saving me. But my point really was nobody. If you're an accountant working at Coke, you may not know how much a roof is. And if somebody just says, "Well, in 5 years you're going to need a roof," you go, "Well, was that 30,000 too?" So the guide is the key for them to be able to budget down the road.
right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that relates to, I guess, every mechanical item that you look at.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
And like I said, we offer free technical advice. So if they have
Okay.
any questions down the road, they can call me up and I'll do my best to answer it or find the answer for them. How do I get this fixed? Who do I go see? And I'll research it for them.
Okay. And Kelly, once the inspection's over and John's left, what happens then when you're there and the buyer's there? Do they have the book or
Well,
have
they get that after. They get
Okay.
a little bit of information. John sits down with them. And of course, they've gone through the 2.5 hours, as I have. And
Right.
so they've heard things, along the way. And some of it is minor, very minor. And maybe something isn't. But, a lot of people have a misconception that a house has either passed or failed a home inspection. Well, it really doesn't pass or fail. It's just, here is what it is. And how do we deal with something that maybe not, maybe a surprise. It's
Yes.
like, I don't climb in the attic.
Right,
You know, so
right.
I don't know what's up there. So, but John is very good, because if there is a situation where there's something that needs to be remedied, and maybe it's not even a dollar value, maybe it's something that my buyer doesn't know how to fix, but the homeowner says, "Oh, I do that all the time. I can fix that for you." So it can be remedied in a lot of different ways, and that's what I depend on him for.
That's great. If you were to do a home inspection, and Toronto's clearly a multicultural city, and there was your client was, let's say English was not the first language, but you have to communicate the issues that come around the home inspection. How do you handle that? What would you do at the inspection?
If my client
Yeah.
didn't speak English,
Not as well as you felt they should.
well, in that case, I probably would have had to have taken measures before, because if they weren't understanding English, I probably wouldn't have done an offer with them.
So you had somebody helping at that point.
At
Right.
that point, it would have been a
Yeah.
little different.
Okay.
That's very important.
I mean, obviously it's multicultural everywhere. Do you find that much in how
Usually-
and same for you, if somebody's there and you're trying to communicate a concept that they may never have heard?
Yeah, usually if it's older people, then sometimes their children are there and they're fluent in English.
Yes, yes, yes.
A lot of times it might just be the realtor himself understands the language.
Makes sense,
And
'cause
can
they had-
communicate to them what.
Right, because as Kelly said,
going
before
on.
they ever got to the home inspection, they'd have to have understood putting an offer together. So
Yeah.
somebody would have had to help them with
That's
that.
Yeah.
That's good. In terms of, let's call it recreational properties outside the city, cottages, things like that, is that something where you have to have special training, or do you use the same skills you have in the city?
Pretty much use the same skills. I was fortunate enough, I was born and raised just outside of Peterborough. So we had a septic system, we had a well. I still go up north all the time, so I'm very familiar with a lot of the systems there. If it's just, washing water from the lake with a pump. So there's a lot of things I'm familiar with, so that's handy.
And I'm city, not country, so it's all new to me. But how often would you be called out to do something outside of, say, a municipality where they have water and sewage, like where you're doing that type
The
of
odd time
research?
you got up in Caledon.
Yeah,
Yeah, you don't
would
have to go that far, really.
Right, and
Just
those
up-
aren't cheap houses in Caledon, so.
No,
Not at all.
Well, it depends what you get, but no,
Right.
there's some
Yeah.
reasonably priced ones up
Yeah.
there too. But yeah, they have all
Okay.
the wells and septics and water softeners and everything.
Okay, and so Kelly, when we're here, having a chance to really educate the viewer
that's correct.
today,
Yes.
I guess we can start with, what are the things you think that would help a first-time buyer, because I think that's the big issue in many cases, to understand at the point of the agreement of purchase and sale what a home inspection will do for them. When that comes up and there's a clause conditional on that, and they've never bought a house, they don't know what a home is. How do you kind of get them to the point where they say, "Oh, now I understand what that is. Why I need it."
I explain it until they understand.
Okay.
As long as it takes. It's not difficult. It's fairly easily written.
Okay.
Or the clauses that I use are very user friendly.
Right.
And I explain it to them. I explain what will happen.
Which
and
is the key.
Yes, and I
Okay.
explain, there may be a crack in the basement that is not a problem. Maybe
Right.
it's been there 20 years and it doesn't leak. Whereas, and I don't know the difference between them. So again, that's why I'm
Right.
John. But one thing that I guess we've been focusing on through this whole segment is buyers. But what John has, again, sort of forgotten to mention is that I use him for my sellers as well, because a pre-inspection
Right.
is very, very good for the seller.
Great.
And in that case, if I'm listing your home and I have John come in and do a pre-inspection, everything comes to light for that homeowner, so we know what to expect. And then when it comes time for the offer coming in from the buyer, there's no hesitation, there's no worry. It really relieves a lot of nerves, because if there's anything wrong, it can be fixed.
Actually, we talked a little bit about
we
the seller doing the home inspection, but you brought up a really good point, Kelly, that if there's anything wrong, it can be fixed, so that when the buyer's inspection comes along, it's not even there.
That's right.
It's been fixed. It just makes it a much simpler You know, this term falling in love with a house, I think there's so much emotion when somebody sees, after looking at many properties, sees the house they really want. The home inspection is really a nervous time. And what you don't want to do is, you don't want to create this sense that I made a bad decision, right? Mm-hmm. That's the worst thing that can happen. Mm-hmm. So the home inspector is there to really help confirm you made a good decision and to help the whole transaction come together. Again, when I started in the business, it was really, it was iffy in terms of what home inspectors did. How did the government, or how did the trades, or how did it get better? Like, I started in '84, so in the last too many years to mention. How did it get really to where it's at today? What do you think made it? Was it the consumer? Was it like, why is it so much better than then?
It must be consumer. I think they got a lot to do with it because, like anything, they demand more.
Okay.
They want more. They want more bang for the buck. They want to know more information. So chances are maybe there's some people that were just fed up. I know our company started in Bedford, Nova Scotia by real estate professionals that were not happy with the inspections they were getting.
Really?
So they formed the company,
Wow.
and then over the years just got it franchised, and now we're like over 120 strong across Canada in 6 countries.
Wow.
So obviously they felt a huge need for it.
Really?
And
It's like necessity is the mother of invention. They needed a home inspector, and they became one.
Yeah.
All right. Before we started the show, you mentioned there's a lot of, let's call it stories that you could talk about working with John in situations like that. Do you want to, we have a few minutes left. Do you want to talk a bit about
sure.
that?
And I can give you an example that just happened recently. I had a client who purchased a home. It was conditional on an inspection. We called John in, and he found not anything major, but he found something of concern. So, of course, the buyers were there, we were there, and we talked about it. John, explained that this was not a major problem, but it should be looked at. And then, of course, myself goes to the seller, who has a different agent. I go to their agent, and negotiate or discuss it with them and say, this is what they found. So there's really not a butting heads. This is what we found. It gives weight to having a professional home inspector, working. And the seller says, we didn't know that. A lot of times they don't. They're not trying to hide anything. They didn't know. So in that case, we can rectify it. So they rectified it. And then what John did was he came back. We called him and said, would you go back and look at this again? And he's happy to do it. So he goes down. He doesn't, charge again for another visit. And it does take time away from him. But he goes back and he checks it and says, yeah, this looks great and it's fine and there's no problem now. So that's another way that he can rectify something like that.
It kind of triggered to me a thought. If, let's say, one of Kelly's clients sees house number 1, they do a home inspection, it didn't work out. Now they want to put an offer in a house number 2. How do you handle sort of pricing when you're doing multiple home inspections?
I usually give them a discount.
Aren't you glad I asked the question?
Sure.
But that happens a lot, right? You know that, Kelly. They'll find one house. It's not really the right house for them. And it's depressing. But then they find the next one, they're excited, but they still need a home inspection. So, if they like the home inspector, that's helpful to the client, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you do the same work. It's not
yeah.
less, but, just that. I was thinking about this. We were talking before the show started about when people start their day and things like that. Well, I was just thinking about this. Generally, you'll do a home inspection during the day when you can see what's going on, right?
Yes.
If someone's on a shift or something like that and they can't get there, have you had any kind of weird times when you've done home inspections, like at night, things that you go, wow, why are we doing it now?
The only one I had was just, I think it was last week. I had someone call me, their home inspector couldn't come. They called me 6:15, and they wanted me in Unionville at 7:15. It was like, okay, it'll take me that long to get there, but
Really?
that was a late time. I just wanted to get there and get the outside done before the sun had set.
Which is the big issue, because if
Yeah,
you can't
that's
see,
it.
how can
It's
you
easier this time of
report?
year.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
true.
The
Yes.
winter we're doing home inspections. We need to get the outside done by
Right.
5 o'clock.
Yeah.
And actually, Kelly brings up exactly where we should go with this, because we talked about summer before, can't see the pool. How about winter? What happens when you're doing an inspection December 26th, maybe 23rd, and there's ice everywhere and there's snow everywhere and the roof's covered up, and How do you handle?
Well, that's just, again, it's just the limitations. You just have to document all your limitations. The good thing about roof is if there's any damage, a lot of times you can see it in the attic.
So you don't have to actually see the shingles.
No,
you go
you can,
inside.
yeah, you can see stuff in there. Foundations, same thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's always going to be limitations. It doesn't matter what
Kelly,
season.
in homes that you've sold or worked on, I guess ask Kelly, and then she'll probably get you involved. The question of mold, does that come up much in inspections, and how do you deal with that question? Because
That's the M word.
Well, it's the most sophisticated, difficult concept in home inspection. So I'll throw the floor out to you guys.
Well, yes, that is the M word, and yes,
I thought marriage was the M word,
well,
but maybe this is
okay.
the other M word. Okay.
In my business, it's the mold
Okay.
word. But you know what? You have to have conditions for mold to grow. So usually, if you can get rid of the conditions, and so
Right.
it doesn't grow, I guess you have to determine that, and that actually again falls back to John
Okay.
because he's the one that crawls around in the attic or has his moisture meters in the basement.
So
or,
actually, let's
you know.
talk about, and again, I'm assuming a lot of our viewers don't understand some of the terms. What's a moisture meter? What does it do?
Well, it's a meter I use. Well, check the moisture content in drywall or wood because you can't really see.
Right,
I
you
can
can't.
use my infrared camera to see if there's any temperature change.
Okay.
If there's leaking behind a wall, a lot of times you can't see it right off the bat. But if the wall should be a uniform temperature and there's an area where it's a little bit cooler, you might question why. Then
Okay.
you can bring the moisture meter out, and if it's wetter there, then it kind of raises a red flag, and then you might do a little bit further investigation.
So, in fact, what we're saying is that the home buyer who wants to save the money and not do a home inspection and has a relative who's a handyman come and check the house and doesn't have these tools and they just bought a house for $300,000-$400,000, probably penny wise and pound foolish. These aren't tools everybody knows or can use
That's correct.
or
yeah,
understands.
yeah.
And without those tools, you can't tell a finished basement. A lot of
Right.
times,
Right.
sometimes the carpet is dry, but behind it there could be moisture.
Yeah.
In terms of any interesting, I guess every real estate person has interesting stories about weird things. In terms of a home inspection that was either way more emotional or way less emotional, anything you can recall? Where the client,
That's kind of putting me
you
on
don't
the
have
spot.
to use names, don't use names, but
It doesn't really come to mind.
Okay.
I mean, there have been, obvious things. I really haven't had a situation where, a deal has actually fallen apart.
Right.
It has to be pretty major, for something like that, at least in my experience. I'm sure that other realtors have different experiences, but mine, I just
That's
seem
great.
to be able to negotiate with them, and I don't have anything that, there's certainly lots of things that are funny in real estate, but
Right,
not
but
necessarily
not
the
this.
home inspection.
well, one of the things I think we're trying to do today is to give the consumer a sense of what is a home inspection, because although the industry knows about it, the consumers generally don't. And so in talking to John today and to Kelly, our goal was, let's talk about what home inspectors do, let's talk about how they work with realtors, and let's hope that the consumer, when they go for their next home purchase, will be knowledgeable enough to say, I'd like a home inspection, and I want a home inspection from a qualified home inspector. I think, would you say that's kind of, if there's a result that we want for the show tonight, is that kind of what we're trying to achieve?
Yeah, I've had, if I get people to call me, I'll say, it's nice if you use me, because they've got a few cards from Realtor. I said, it's nice if you use me, I'd appreciate it, but if you don't, make sure it's a professional.
Good point.
I will
Right.
always point that out. And usually because I say that, they'll give me the business.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure everybody uses a professional.
Right.
Just because I just don't want to see the name
Well,
dragged in
you-
mud. I don't want to see unhappy people out there.
Right. And you know what? In a real estate purchase, the real estate salesperson is a professional, the lawyer is a professional. Why would you give up? Why would you give up on what you're going to be living in? The other's just paper, right? You're dealing with paper with lawyers and real estate. We're going to pick this up in a few minutes. But what I think we've done today is we've talked about, is a home inspection important? Yes or no? That's our question. Answer it. We'll be right back. Thanks.
The opinions expressed in the following program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Rogers or Rogers TV.
Welcome back. We're on In Tune with Real Estate, the RAV Tour show In Tune. Tonight, I'm Howard Drukarsh. I've been hosting for RAV. We've had a show that really talked about what we believe in the industry is one of the most important parts of a purchase, which is home inspections. John Brook has been with us as the home inspector, and Kelly Mitchell is here as a real estate professional, our guest as well. So I thought the nice way to wrap it up is to give each of them a chance to come up with two things they want to leave the audience with. So I'm going to start with John. Two things that you think people, after everything we talked about, the two things you think you go, I hope they remember these two.
Well, hire a professional inspector.
Okay.
As much as your cousin or uncle might be offended if you don't use them,
Okay.
hire a professional. Like you said, you're using a professional for every other aspect of the home purchase. Why not use?
Okay, great. And the other one?
If this is a business that you think you might be interested in, check out our website, look into it. There's always room for some good
What
inspectors.
a great plug.
Hey, www.abuyerschoice.com.
Okay, thank you. Kelly, you get to close off with 2 points.
Okay, well, I'm just going to say this. Real estate in your home is likely the largest investment you will ever make.
Right.
And you're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars. You need to spend $300 or $400 to get it checked out.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to get it checked out by a professional such as John.
Okay, number 2 point.
Oh, that was two. I sort of included the professional.
I kind of thought it was one blended, but okay. And
Call me
take
and
it.
I'll
I'll
set
Okay,
you
so
up with them.
So you know what? I'll do number 2, or what I think could be number 2. I hope the viewers see that real estate can be a comfortable situation. We've got an expert here working with an expert as well, and it's not confrontational. You're working together on behalf of the client. And I think if there's any kind of stress that comes out in a transaction, you should really wonder, are these the people you want to work with, whether it's the salesperson, whether it's the lawyer, whether it's the home inspector. It should be comfortable, and just like you deal with a doctor or any other professional, someone you really trust. That was what I wanted to leave everyone with tonight. The other thing is I want to thank RAV Tour for giving me the opportunity to be on a show tonight. And I also want to thank the people at Rogers. It's a fantastic community network, and I hope everyone enjoys this. So on behalf of myself, Kelly, John, RAV Tour, who's not here, thank you so much for watching. Come back next week. You'll see RAV, and you'll be back with In Tune with Real Estate with RAV Tour. Thanks. Have a good evening. Good night.